Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. I am your host, Ken Butterscotch Seymour, and with me today is your other host, the fantastic Richard Vanilla Geiger. This week you're vanilla. Next week you might be chocolate. Possibly bring in bread pudding at some point.
I've always been chocolate, and now I'm vanilla.
I like variety. Don't you, as a listener, like variety?
Existential crisis on who I am.
You can't have the same pudding every single week. It's just got to be. It's got to be a little different. At least until we come up with something that's concrete. If we start getting like this grouping of people, we might have everybody have a different flavor. Be them, and we won't even have our names. We'll just be known as our flavor.
Butterscotch, yo.
That's right. Somebody will be tapioca. Our geriatric news contributor.
This week we went down to the street.
So this is actually a really fun episode. I'm very excited to be bringing it, and it's something that's near and dear to my heart because it is something that I participate in every year. We are talking about GenCon. Are you ready? GenCon, right?
How many years in a row have you been participating?
Every year that it has been in Indianapolis. So a lot of years. I'm going to grab a prop. You will not see me move. In fact, we're going to cut right here.
Did you go to ever one when it was in Wisconsin?
No, that was a little too far of a drive, partly, and partly I didn't really know about it until the chance to go to a couple of other conventions, and people would say, "Oh, GenCon's fantastic. Where is it? Wisconsin." Yeah, that's not happening anytime soon. But 2003, this very first badge that I ever had for going to GenCon. It is, I keep all of my badges. They are my knick-knack from every con, that and the guide. But it's a very different con than it used to be. Did you ever know about this particular convention?
That's negatory.
Negatory? Okay. So, board game, card game, role-playing game, pretty much any type of game convention. And it grew from pretty humble origins to just be the monster that it is today.
Besides the one that's in Germany, would you say this is one of, if not
This is probably the second biggest in the world. Essen is still the biggest. But, yeah, GenCon is pretty much right there.
I know you can go to, I think it's in South Bend, and you can go to the Essen House and have lots of delicious food.
Not quite the same thing.
Oh, okay.
But there have been some pretty phenomenal changes. I mean, even if you're not a game person, you have to know at least somebody. There's no way almost that you don't know somebody that plays Magic the Gathering nowadays, because it's been around for 20 years plus, and it's just this juggernaut. And back in the days when GenCon was new, I don't know if they premiered at GenCon, but that was one of the early conventions that they were at. It's a slightly different animal than it used to be. You would get your passes, and there would often be a swag bag. So you would have this it was cool stuff. Packs of cards for games that you hadn't played before, like Magic, or promotional cards for certain games, things like that. You would get that in the bag with your guide to the convention.
Now, where was this one at in 2003? I know Indy.
It's still Indianapolis, still a convention center. I mean, so even then, it may not have been quite as massive as it is now, but it was still big. I mean, it's grown every year. At that point, it was just the convention center pretty much, but it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And you cannot go anywhere in Indianapolis whenever GenCon is going without running into something from GenCon. If you're within a mile of the convention center, good luck. It is massively crowded. There are a lot of people, 60,000 plus, something like that. It's ridiculous the number of people that attend this convention.
And tell me about how many days the convention goes on for.
So 4 days is the convention, Thursday through Sunday. It always happens in August. Now, where in August, it kind of moves around a little bit. but it's if the smart people generally get there Wednesday so they can get what they need. Back in the Origins, different convention. Back in the original days of the con, you could go and line up, get your badge, go and sign up for your different stuff that you wanted to do, look at the book while you're waiting in line, and then do whatever you need to do. If you try and do that now, you are just asking for a world of pain. I mean, take all the worst things about going to a theme park, waiting in line for whatever ride, except at the end of the line, there's no ride. It's just tickets so that you can go to what you want to do later. Everything it's best. If you're going to go to GenCon, you want to make sure that you're planning this out 6 months. Just be prepared. They start doing things early. Usually January is when you have to really start planning for August, because that's when they're going to I believe that's when they're going to open the floodgates to be able to start getting your badges and stuff. And then it'll still take a while after that for the different vendors and the different people that are going to be doing events to fill up, and eventually they will release the event schedule, and you can pre-register for a lot of the events. Some are really popular. If you're not within the first 10 minutes of when they open the gates, you're not getting in. Whatever you want is probably already full. Some things are going to be that busy. But the thing about Gen Con is it is massive. So there's so much to do. I feel terrible for saying this, but I almost never do events just because the main convention floor is just this gargantuan area where you can see all the new people all the companies that brought out their new games and test them out. They've got other rooms to test out games. There's just a ton of stuff. But I said they had a swag bag originally, so you would just get stuff in the bag. I'm trying to remember when this changed. I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe. Couldn't do a swag, either couldn't or wouldn't do a swag bag anymore. It's instead more props. Coupon books. They give you all sorts of discounts to stop by the different booths.
Various vendors that are
for what it is.
in place. Yep.
And you still get the goodies. It's just I think there are so many vendors that can't realistically put that stuff all in the same place to hand out in bags. It's just not. It is not logistically feasible. And then on top of that, with the number of people that attend the convention, I don't think it's feasible for the game manufacturers to bring that many copies of whatever it is. That would be just a huge monetary undertaking.
No, from the logistics of getting in and out of the convention center, but then getting into Gen Con, is there really one or two ways for you to get in and that's kind of about it? Or do they have the whole, every way that you can get in is a gate for you to be able to get into the actual
It is honeycombed. You can go pretty much any way because the convention center has a couple of large entryways, but there are a lot of small entryways too. So just to get into the main convention center, there's tons of entry points. The main convention hall has such a large amount of floor space that usually along one side of it there's a huge entrance, and then along the longer side there are 3 entrances that you can get into it. But the vendor hall is connected to other halls. So if you're going to be playing Magic or certain other games as part of your events, it's possible you can come through those halls to get to the main hall. So, it is just all interlaced and interspersed. And if you don't know your way around, it wouldn't hurt if you're going to go for the first time. Like I said, get there Wednesday, not just so you can get your stuff, or more appropriately, have it mailed to you. Don't try and wait in the will call line either. That thing snaked around the building this year. Snaked around the convention hall building. It was massive. But you want to kind of know the layout, know where you're going. If you can get a connected hotel, do it. That's what we did this year. It's what I always try to do, It's not always feasible, and it's not always within the budget of everybody that wants to go to Gen Con, because it is not cheap. Even with the block of rooms that they give you as an option, they give good discounts, but the city of Indianapolis, state of Indiana, pardon me, I don't know which or both decide to do it, but because Gen Con is so large, they jack up the tax rates just massively. So expect like 20% taxes.
Premium rates, let's call them.
Frustratingly annoying. I mean, I understand it's good revenue for the government, but it seems a little slimy to jack up rates for something that brings so much business into the town.
But hotels do that anyway, in a sense. Like, if you want to get a hotel room on Tuesday night, it's not going to cost you as much as it's going to on Saturday night. So that they already have that built in anyway. But anytime there's an event like that, yeah.
The hotel does, but it's not the hotel that's jacking up the rate. It's the actual tax rate increses. So not only do they jack the rates up, the taxes are higher too.
The entertainment tax. Well, you got to pay for those banners that hang from the light posts.
Well, yeah. They did name, was it Georgia became Gen Con Avenue or some such this year, which was kind of a sweet gesture. I enjoyed that. That was nice. Does it justify the 20% tax? I don't know. But, you got to take the good with the bad. It was inevitable. I have to believe that Comic-Con is the exact same way in California. They almost certainly have to just jack the tax rates up because you've got tens of thousands of people going to this convention.
I'm sure the tax rates there are already 20%, so they just bump them up to 40. Let us know.
One of the other things that you get for going to Gen Con is this gorgeous little guidebook. Now, Gen Con this year also introduced their own app that you can get on the phone to kind of get all of your information, but you get kind of a guide to some general information for the events that are going. And I mean very general information. This is this year's convention guide. Last year's, now you don't have to cut this one because it's just over here.
I'm not cutting the first one.
If he doesn't cut it, you might not see Richard for a little while. He's going to disappear. Originally, for the previous year, they had the events actually all within the guide as well. I think it's a smart move. As much as I enjoy having a physical book that has all the events in it, having it on an app is fine, and just having the big stuff that you want to really have known be there makes just as much sense to me. Now, for those of you just listening and not seeing, I was showing pictures of these stuff. I just realized that not everybody's going to see that.
Yeah, I mean, these things are... So this is looking at last year's. Does it have a number of pages? 300 pages.
Yeah.
Was last year's basically magazine that they hand out to, 40,000 people that want to actually take them. So,
compared to 160
from this year. The reason that they did that is more environmentally friendly.
I'm sure that played into it. The people that are the owners of Gen Con are very forward thinking. They tend to try and take into consideration as much as possible of things that really are important. I mean, it's a very welcoming, as huge as it is, it's generally a very welcoming environment. We generally stay away from any sort of politics or any sort of religion in this podcast. But since we're kind of talking about this anyway, they don't really, if you're religious, you're not religious, this convention is going to go over the course of 4 days. So that often takes families that do have a religious bent into a location that might not be close to their local church, but they have some things in place to kind of compensate for that. They have, or at least there is an organization that is, Christian gamers that is generally present at Gen Con. It's very important to them that everybody is feels welcome and is represented, and they deal swiftly and harshly with anybody that breaks the environment that they're trying to create. Now, some would say that they may be not completely even-handed in how they distribute that. I can't say one way or the other because I haven't looked. I try and be very fair on that. And since I don't have the information, I'm going to assume that they probably are doing pretty good because they've always done well by me.
And you're going there to enjoy the stuff, not to see what people they didn't want to have there.
Yeah, exactly. And there have been people that have been controversial that they've had at the convention before, and with a few outliers as exceptions, it didn't really cause much of a fuss one way or the other. People that can stir a strong reaction one way or the other. There have been some people there that stir a strong reaction in me. I just don't go to their events. I ignore it.
Big enough you can kind of avoid that corner.
That's right. It is super easy to avoid. So I mean, all in all, they do just a fantastic job every year. And that's why it's kind of the place I haven't missed one. And unless they move out of state, I won't miss one. But so like I said, if you're going to go to GenCon, it's huge. So prep early, be ready, get as good of a hotel room as you can, as close as you can. There is a lot of walking. We were connected to the convention hall. I mean, it's like working in Amazon's distribution center. You're going to be going up and down aisles and picking things out, just with better bathroom breaks and food trucks.
And downtown Indy's always been a place that's been a very centralized location for places to stay, places to eat, places to drink, like whatever. So there are plenty of places outside of the downtown that you can stay and then come in, but there's just so much to do inside the downtown area that once you're there, you don't have to go too much anywhere else really to have a good 4 days.
Well, and that's the other nice thing, that GenCon has been doing this for so long, and they have so many companies that they work with hand in hand, that you'll get things like some of the restaurants have special menus that they do for GenCon. There's a brewery that creates a beer for GenCon every year, and that's one of they'll have often glasses, and you can get that. It'll run out fast. You better get it quick. And from what I heard, I'm not a beer drinker myself, but from what I hear, it's generally pretty good. So I mean, you've got those relationships that you've built up, and it just enriches the experience for everyone. Now, speaking of relationships and building up, that kind of interaction, not just with businesses but with other people. That's kind of something that social media is used for, right?
Is it?
Well,
yes, it is.
And yelling at people you disagree with who are probably not listening to you anyway.
Yes, being a blind face of contention.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So we figure this is a good time to bring up the fact that we have social media too. I mean, you probably already know this if you're listening, but it does not hurt to tell your friends. We are on Twitter as Real Pudding Guys. We're on Facebook as Pudding Guys. We are on Instagram as
Pudding Guys.
It's kind of a theme that goes on with everything that we've got. We are even on Patreon. Now, this Patreon thing is fairly new, and we would love to have your support on that. Doing this is just a passion. It's something that we love, but it takes money and it takes time, and helping us to create new content, to get new interviews, like being able to talk to Heather Antos last week. That was fantastic. Only was able to do it because of some of the donations that we've received, so that we can do the things that we need to do. $1 a month. That's all we ask. It helps us to pay for the services and to be able to, like I said, be able to get the stuff that is going to create fun conversations.
It's like 3 cents a day.
Yeah. We don't want to break anybody's bank. times are tough, but people have got stuff to spend their money on. We don't necessarily want to kill anybody with that. But $1, I think people can afford $1 to just have some fun conversations with your friends. Your pudding friends, right?
Yay!
Absolutely. That's all the advertising we're going to do. So we've got a lot more to cover on GenCon. We're going to get easily 2 episodes out of this because there is just a ton. We're going to cover kind of the flavor of it here, and then we're going to have a couple of interviews that I was able to conduct with some very nice people in here. And then the next episode, we're going to go over some more of what means to go to GenCon and some of the neat stuff that you can do. We'll have a couple more interviews. So, fun stuff. I know it's usually probably good to describe what's in the episode before we've actually been recording for 15, 20 minutes. But
yeah, it's in the description.
Yeah,
kind
exactly.
of,
Seat of our pants. That's what I like to think. It's more exciting. It's more, it's not exciting. It's more real.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff. So
I wonder where that originated from.
That's actually that's a good question. Maybe it's a magic reference of some kind.
Possibly.
Cards flying out of your sleeves. So you got a feel of what you need to do if you're going to go to GenCon. The other thing you should probably do if you're going to go to GenCon, how I mentioned everything is more expensive. That includes food. Just a idea. Well, not an idea, but a piece of advice. One of the things I always look for in any time I'm going to GenCon, if I can possibly help it, the hotel that I'm going to stay at, breakfast served. Because the average meal, if you've got 4 people going to GenCon, if you get away with $40, congratulations, you're doing good. Most of the meals are not going to be that cheap, even if you're just eating the food in the convention center. I mean, you're getting usually $15 per person per meal. So that's $60 a pop.
Just go to Steak and Shake.
Also, good luck with that. Very popular Steak and Shake downtown Indianapolis. During GenCon, you're probably not getting in.
And it's actually still open, too.
It is. A lot of things aren't there anymore. But if you can get the breakfast included, that takes out 1 meal. You just have to worry about lunch and dinner. And some people have been known to take peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, snacks, Slim Jims, go cheap kind of during the midday and just have the one big meal around dinner time. Because some people don't want to leave the convention hall floor either, because there's just so much to do and to look at. But I guess that's enough of the advice for the convention. I'll have more in the next episode from my many decades of attending the conventions.
I've got advice. Adult diapers.
Probably already being used by some of the people. Gamer funk is a thing to be afraid of at the conventions. That's the other, I guess, the last piece of advice I'll do. Truthfully, shower often.
Please.
Yeah, that would be really great. Be kind to your fellow gamers,
especially if you're walking around in some type of cosplay that's heavy duty that you've worked a lot of time on. Probably hot and sweaty inside there.
It is a rough environment during August to be in multiple layers in a costume. I have a great deal of respect for people that do that. So anyway, that was kind of just a little taste, a little bit of experience. Now, one of the fun things that I was able to do as part of this was speak with a handful of game manufacturers, people of interest, and just get a little snippet of what's going on in their lives and in their professional careers, and what are they bringing out, what are they doing. So the first one up that we're going to deal with has to do with Jasco Games. Now, if you listen to our Origins review, you'll know that I attended Origins and was lucky enough to speak with Amber Benson, who was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And the whole reason I was able to speak with Amber was because she came out to help promote the Buffy the Vampire Slayer board game, which is produced by Jasco Games.
Good job, Jasco.
That is a good job. That game is really, really fun for certain groups of gamers. Doesn't work so well if you have somebody that's very controlling, that kind of wants to orchestrate everything. That kind of takes some of the fun out of it. If you've got a nice group of people that can cooperate and kind of get into the feel of everything, it flows really well, and it's a great game. I enjoyed it, and the production value is high, the art is good, just solid all around. But that's not the only game they make. So I had a chance to sit down with one of the gentlemen involved with Jasco Games, and he tells me a little bit about the history of the company, some of the products that they've got, and hopefully you will enjoy it.
All right, back at GenCon 2019, we are here with Jasco Games, and specifically we are with Kai Nesbitt. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So for those that are familiar with the podcast so far, we were lucky enough to have a brief moment to speak with Amber Benson at Origin. The reason that we had that ability is because of the game she was associated with. The game was produced by Jasco. So I would love to know, because I enjoyed that game so much and I've enjoyed some of your other games, I would love to know a little bit about the history of the company, kind of how you guys came onto the scene.
Okay, so it's interesting. I've got quite the history with Jasco Games. I've only been with the company for 4 months, but I've been with the property off and on for my entire 17-year career in the industry. So I'll start there a little bit, just so we can kind of go figure out where the first product that Jasco made comes from. So Jason, the founder of Jasco, started the company at 13. He was selling Workshop out of his house under contract with Games Workshop as a store. So he was able to convince them to basically be a 13-year-old retailer, and then with licensing from his mother and all that kind of thing. So it was all above board.
It's got some chutzpah.
Yeah. So and then at 16 he had a location and ran that store through high school, and then continued to finish school and go through all that stuff and be involved in the industry that way. And during that time, I was actually started at Sabretooth as an intern right before the launch of their first Warhammer 40K game. Flash forward 3 years later, we have hired my best friend since 7th grade, who ends up being one of the primary designers for UFS, David Freeman. So Ryan Miller and David Freeman designed the game. So
it's okay, we all are. That's why we're in study hall.
The game came out for a few years through Sabretooth, and then it was sold through Fantasy Flight, and then Jason was able to acquire the game from Fantasy Flight and continue the game until this day, which has been about, I believe, 13 years. And during that time, I've met him and gone back and forth about things. We've always got along, and he's been able to really build a beautiful community. The UFS players are great. They're friendly. It's been in the spirit of what we tried to build when we first started at Sabretooth. So we've always kind of talked about it'd be cool to work together on again. And then recently, 4 months ago, he's like, "Hey, buddy, I need some help," and it was perfect timing for me. And so I've been able to come back, and right at a time when Jasco's really got some exciting things going on.
So like I said, my introduction to the company was the Buffy game.
Oh,
basically.
Buffy, yeah.
But what was the first kind of big hit that kind of put Jasco on the map?
So I would say, honestly, I think the board game for sure was Buffy. That was when they came into board games, Buffy has done amazing. I think one of the things that really stands out about the company is the passion and the fandom of the products that we do. We don't do products that we're not already fans of and love. So, we had a lot of people that were great fans of Buffy, and I think that really lends to a game that really catches that kind of the things that people love about the game, about the show represented in the game. So that has done really well. We've gone through tons of print runs on this product. We just launched our expansion, Friends and Frenemies, which is a great addition to the base game. New characters, all that kind of stuff. We've got an Angel game actually coming out within the next so many months to to expand on that with even more characters, and so it's that has been, I think, like the that would be say the core of a board game.
Okay, now you've gotten my attention now with that. Will the Angel game be kind of an expansion on the same themes, or will it be a different kind of?
It's really interesting, actually. It's the gameplay is different, but you can use the character cards from any of the games. So the character cards actually will work from Angel will work in Buffy,
nice,
and the Buffy characters will work in Angel. So it's basically cross-compatible that way, but the gameplay will be quite a bit different than what Buffy is now. So
now we were talking a little bit before we started recording. In fact, there was a game that sold out right as we were talking.
Yeah,
that was really popular. What? Tell me a little bit about that and what made it such a hit this year at the.
Okay,
at the
so Cowboy Bebop is an amazing anime. It's a show basically about a crew of characters that travel as bounty hunters, catching criminals, but they're almost always constantly hungry and starving and almost out of fuel. And they all have these little side stories that they follow and take off. And I mean, it's a really, really fun and engaging anime, and so we captured that in the board game as well. So it's a cooperative game that you play as the characters, and you've got you basically have to manage your fuel. You know, whether you're going to starve to death while trying to accomplish these little personal side objectives, and then also capture the bounty. And to win the game, you have to complete all your side objectives, your personal objectives, and the one together. And not starve. And I think one of the coolest things about it is Ein, the dog that's in the show, is actually a universal resource. So once per player turn, one person can use them as a resource.
That's pretty
really
funny.
Cute, yeah.
Now I'm hoping that it includes a CD of the really awesome jazz music. That's a part of the intro, right? It's got to come with it.
That would be great.
Oh,
but you can YouTube that. And actually, that's one of the things. Like actually, our graphic designer, this is his favorite game, and he's like, oh yeah, you just got to listen to the music while you're playing the game. It just adds a great ambiance. So.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that. It's one of my favorite soundtracks to any anime that I think I've ever heard. What's one of your favorites probably that's going on right now?
What we're doing?
What's one of your favorite games that you guys have coming out right now?
Oh boy, I mean, I'm a big fan of all of them. I mean, there's also, of course, the history with UFS, which we've just announced a big change in the system. But the system's staying the same. We're going to rebrand the game itself as Universes. I've always had a little bit of trouble with people saying UFS, UFC, USF, so it's a brand that's been around for a long time, and we're giving it kind of a more upgraded treatment, a little bit more intuitive design to it, with the launch of the My Hero Academia release, which will be first quarter of next year, which is super exciting for me on a lot of levels, not just on getting to play the game that I've been familiar with for so long, but My Hero is my and my kids' favorite anime. And in fact, my daughter has been writing like fan fiction. She's written like 10. She's 14. She's been writing 10 pages of fan fiction. She's constantly reading other stories. She's going to cosplay for her first time as a My Hero character.
That's
so we're
fantastic.
super excited about this.
Nice.
So
we know about the games, and I've talked about this to a handful of different manufacturers. What are, as somebody that's kind of behind the scenes, what are some of the things that you really relish about working on games in general, or what are some of the unexpected roadblocks? Well, maybe not roadblocks, but some of the difficulties, the things that you have to overcome in order to make these projects work the way that you want them to.
Oh wow, I've got a lot of history of that. I mean, I think for me, I came into the industry as a big fan. Growing up with these games, from war games to collectible card games to just board games. So there's that fandom of it, but like one of the things I love about what we do, and I love the licensing side of stuff, because getting to create experiences from things that you loved as a kid or now or whatever, but being able to immerse yourself in that world has been really awesome. I mean, like, some people really want to create their own worlds, like that kind of thing. But I really love getting to work on something that I got to geek out about, and then create an experience for other players or other people that reflects how I see that fandom, And that's something that Jason is also a huge proponent of. I mean, we got a lot of retro products, Mega Man, Pixel Tactics with 1198 Games partnership. I mean, Street Fighter, all these things. These are things that we've always loved. So to be able to kind of get on the back end and then get to see what goes on behind the scenes of these properties that you saw as a kid, like, it's really cool.
And so, if you're not familiar and you're listening to this, there are so many different properties that Jasco has made games surrounding, whether they're television shows, whether they're anime. What is one of the oddest choices, do you think, that has been co-opted into a game by Jasco?
Oddest choices, huh? Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, they're all a little odd because they're all kind of the kind of geeky stuff. I mean,
something you would not have expected to choose.
I think. Well, actually, the system of UFS, which was originally designed as a fighting system, like Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers versus Soul Calibur, right?
Yeah.
And then, like, adding the anime titles into that was not necessarily intuitive, because it's like, the system is designed as, like, kind of like, how do we represent cool video game combat in cards? But the cool thing is it's flexible. It's turned out to be flexible enough that you really do get, like, that really cool experience that you see in anime of, like, those power-ups and like Deku in My Hero, like how he's a strategist, but he's not super tough all the time, but he has a super powerful ability to attack. But it's like there's a drawback to that, right? He can injure himself, and like how the card game, you can get that feeling actually playing it. You actually kind of get into the headspace of that. So it's been really interesting to see kind of that, like, see a system that was just designed to kind of be like, oh, this is totally cool, like Street Fighter and things, like pretty, like, that side-scrolling fighting games, and then be able to do something really kind of neat that is very thematic and really rich with a deeper story. Super cool. Like, that was not something I would have necessarily expected we could have done with that game.
That is definitely cool. Now, you can take a look at all of the products for Jasco on their webpage, which is pretty easy to get to, but I'm assuming that you also have some social media presence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, check out our Jasco Games Facebook. We've been announcing a lot of cool stuff. We've had a lot of fun on the social media lately with announcing My Hero and getting all kinds of new players and content. So, hit us up if you have any questions. Hit our messenger. Stay tuned for lots of cool things.
Well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk with me, telling me about some of the cool stuff that Jasco has coming out, and I'm definitely looking forward to it myself. And until next year, I'm sure we'll see you again.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
All right.
So cool, right? They had all sorts of really neat stuff, and if you go onto our webpage, we're going to have Jasco Games have a guest page, just like any person will. We'll have some pictures of some of their stuff that's up there. It'll be good, and of course some links straight to their website so that you can see some of the products that they have to offer. It's just neat stuff. And a lot of it's going to be things that you might or might not recognize. A lot of anime-related products, but for those that aren't anime, knowledgeable, it doesn't matter because the games are just really good. But very, very cool. I enjoyed that greatly. One of the other things that I was able to do, one of the big presences at GenCon every year. If you go to GenCon, they are booth 100. They're always in the first spot you can possibly go to GenCon. They've been doing this for a while, and they make some really great products. We've been lucky enough to talk to a couple of the individuals associated with this company before. Zombie Orpheus Entertainment. They make movies, they make television shows, they do just a variety of different interesting things. I was able to get Ben Dobbins, who is the man that runs Zombie Orpheus, or at least the man that's at the masthead. His name is on the card, sort of a thing. One of the nicest guys that you have a chance to meet. Hardworking gentleman. Always, it's almost a running gag. Always just exhausted at every Gen Con because he's running all over the place trying to make things happen, to get things to occur that need to occur, to produce the best content and to make the best stuff. And it was just a fun little conversation. He's able to spend a little time with us and talk to us about what's coming up. Now, my favorite part about this particular interview is I decided to try and record it. If you're watching it in video right now, with the 60s and 70s Batman television show in mind, we want to have that camera angle where it's just kind of going up into the angle. The only thing I'm missing is a bam or an oomph. Of course, there's really no combat to speak of, but who doesn't like
no Burt Ward either.
Tell us what you think.
All right. Here we are at GenCon 2019. I'm here with Ben Dobbins, the mastermind, the man with the plan, the person at the top of the pyramid of Zoe. Too much build up?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm such an anti-capitalist that, like, the whole pyramid CEO thing makes me super uncomfortable. Like, I tried to figure out, okay, can I join the IWW? Can I join the union? And they all said, no, you're CEO. You're not allowed. And so, I try to keep it as much of a collective experience as possible.
That makes sense. It makes it more family friendly, right?
We're family friendly. It's like the balance between we all make decisions together under the context of a benevolent dictatorship.
We hope it's benevolent anyway.
Yeah, it's more. A lot of people have come. In all honesty, it's a lot of people who've come together to execute a particular plan, who believe in that plan.
Yeah.
And that, I came up with a plan originally, but now it's such a group effort and has evolved so much because you get a bunch of people together who are all brilliant. You're going to come up with something better than any one person could do.
Well, that actually kind of leads into the first thing I wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. Zoe's been around for a little while now, and has managed to accomplish some pretty amazing things in the time that you have managed to just dazzle us with some wonderful movies and episodic television. What this year is something that you're really excited about?
Sure. So we just finished kickstarting Journey Quest Season 4. We did the math recently and realized for all 4.5 seasons of the show, we have raised over $1.2 million for a tiny little web series, which is just baffling. I can't comprehend that. So we're going to be shooting this fall in Canada, if all goes well.
Nice.
I'm now a permanent resident in Canada, and so we're going to work with all those exciting tax credits and film incentives, and I'll be able to go home at night.
Well, yeah, Seattle's just around the corner, right?
I live in Canada.
Oh, you live in Canada?
Yeah,
That's
I
right,
moved.
that's right.
Yeah. So we're doing Journey Quest. I'm leaving tomorrow morning for Mongolia, where I'm going to be shooting the next Strowlers episode.
Nice.
And the actor from multiple actors from the prior Strowlers Mongolia episode are coming back, so
Fantastic.
We're continuing that story. So those are going on. We have more shows in development all the time, and it just comes down to how quickly we can produce on tiny independent budgets.
I heard that the current shooting location is somewhat remote.
Oh, for the August shoot.
Yes.
So for the Strowlers episode, as far as I know, we're primarily shooting in Ulaanbaatar. However, I'm going to begin the Mongolian adventure by spending a couple days in a car heading north, and the car will go off the roads at some point because they do that there. It's really weird. You're on the highway and it's like, nope, now we're just going to turn off into a random field and go over a mountain. And then, so we'll do that. Then we'll switch to horseback and eventually end up in the remote Darkhat Valley, the home of Mongolian shamanism, where the people who live there herd reindeer and ride reindeer. So I actually don't know what we're shooting there. I just know that when your friend reaches out on Facebook and they happen to be a Mongolian shamanism and they say, come to Mongolia, bring your camera, let's get you special permission from the Mongolian military to enter this restricted area.
Wow.
You say, yes, I will miss 3 days of GenCon for that.
Oh, that is an adventure. Not a lot of people get the chance to kind of go just halfway around the world to create something that can be shared through people that might not have a chance to, even in a picture, see what's there.
There are a few things that just excite me about this, especially with what we're doing with Strowlers. It's a global story that's interconnected, that is where we're going, and we're telling stories that could only be told in one place, that are stories created by locals who are immersed in the culture, who are immersed in this experience, and then kind of putting it through the lens of modern fantasy. We shot in Denmark, in Copenhagen, this spring, and ended up coming up with this beautiful story. It's premiering here at GenCon, and I'm going to miss it because Mongolia. This beautiful story that was put together by a war refugee from Bosnia, an Iranian immigrant, and a native Dane, and the perspectives that they all brought to that to come up with a story that could only happen in this particular neighborhood in Copenhagen, but that will be universally accessible, one, and then two, that's going to tie into the Irish story directly, that will eventually tie into the Mongolian story, into the Seattle story. There's just something so special to me about having these hyper-local voices who are often not heard or underrepresented or marginalized, then participating in this global endeavor that gives them a platform and a way to be heard and to be seen.
Well, and a lot of at least casual moviegoers are starting to become more familiar with stories that are connected through multiple movies and things. But this is even different than that, because this is an open world, right? Yeah,
that's exactly it. We've thrown out traditional copyright, not just for Strowlers, but for gamers, for Journey Quest, for Demon Hunters, and said, not only can you remix, not only can you tell your own stories, but you are actually totally free to create your own commercial derivatives, to sell them, and to participate in this. Because Zoe's been based from the very beginning on giving everything away, and we finally reached that point where we realized, we actually can give everything away. So the only thing we really retain now is the showrunner for each show, or the writer's room, are the people who decide what's canon, what's an official part of the story.
That's pretty awesome. And so I kind of wanted to ask this because I have a certain outside perspective, having been lucky enough to be able to see the stuff that you've done from the beginning. So you had this core group of individuals that were involved in the early projects, and they've all kind of branched out into different directions. How exciting is that?
It's exciting in a number of ways. First of all, we have people who participated in the first Demon Hunters and never came back. We have people who participated in the first Demon Hunters 20 years ago who are still making movies with us. And so it's this ongoing process of people finding their voice and exploring their passions, but also being able to then say, you know what, it's been 15 years, let's come together, bring the entire cast back and do another movie with the original Gamers cast. And that kind of, and that happens because of community, it happens because of friendships, and it happens because of passion for, it's fun working together,
Okay, now for the hard questions. I don't have very many of them, truthfully. I like to make things nice and fun. But in creating something of this scope, what are some unforeseen obstacles that you may have run into, and how did you overcome some of them?
You know, the biggest obstacle we're facing right now has nothing to do with us. The internet was designed as an open platform, and it's a platform based fundamentally on being able to make perfect digital copies of information,
Right.
which creates and platforms create culture and they create behavior, right? Mm-hmm. Twitter creates Nazis, for example.
It does seem that way sometimes.
So does Facebook. But the internet, it's at its fundamental purpose, it creates abundance. But from a media perspective, the physical world and capitalism are it's a scarcity economy. Whether that scarcity is real or manufactured is a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
And so in this transition, from what we've seen is that all the people who have an extremely vested interest in maintaining scarcity economy, we saw this with the music industry, we saw this with the film industry,
Right.
They all want to lock their content down. They want to create the walled gardens. They want to make sure it doesn't get pirated. That the internet doesn't do what the internet is built to do, and that's created kind of an evolution of the platform over the years from something with a lot of promise and a whole lot of openness to now these massive walled gardens that are in direct competition with each other. Like, for example, it used to be you could embed a YouTube video on Facebook and it would play on Facebook.
Right.
But now Facebook is getting into video. They want people staying in their walled garden. They turn that function off. And so we've seen each of them kind of, first of all, be very open, very welcoming. How can we make this easy for you? And now it's how can we make money? And that means reducing function, reducing services for a captive audience.
Right.
And how that affects us is that every platform we use gets worse and worse and worse every year. And they all are trying to monetize the relationship that we have with the fans. So it becomes more, and that has now extended. For years we could get around that because of email. That has now extended to email as well, especially with Google introducing their multiple tabs for primary, for marketing, so our emails now mostly get shunted to promotions or updates folders, and the open rate has dropped in half. So the ongoing challenge that we did not anticipate because we figured internet,
Right.
is that the relationships that we build would end up with walls between them, designed by these large tech companies who want to make money off of our ability to communicate openly with each other.
It does seem, at least on the positive side, at least in the gaming community, that there's, for the most part, a shared experience. So there's always going to be at least a certain level of support for people that, like you, that are willing to create something and bring something fresh to the audience.
Yeah.
And I think, I hope that you've seen that in the response.
Overall, yes. I mean, we exist because of those relationships, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely why we're here. And it's the third parties that mediate our access to those relationships that make it difficult. I think where that has changed over the years, and we again didn't anticipate this, we wanted to be very open and include everyone in our audience. And we eventually had to learn very painfully that the only way for us to maintain a healthy community and a healthy audience was to learn how to differentiate between people who are saying, I want to be treated as human, and people who are saying, I want to be able to dehumanize other people. And so many places are forced to make a choice between those two. And the ones who want to dehumanize so often have the loud voices and say, we're going to take our money away, we're going to complain. They tend to come from very kind of entitled and often clueless positions. And so we had to choose. And so as a result, we've absolutely had people leave our community because we said, it's more important that we be welcoming for LGBTQ people. It's more important that we be welcoming for disabled people. It's more important that we be welcoming for women. Even that was controversial. A bunch of people rage quit us because we made a movie that suggested that women are people instead of objects.
That seems kind of odd.
And that's the problem. The internet it moves data around, and it's easy to make money off of moving hate around, which is why all the major platforms allow it to happen.
Yeah. I think though one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the projects that you've done is everything that you've seemed to approach has been from a place of sharing joy, of sharing something positive and moving that.
Sharing joy, sharing empathy, sharing understanding. Gamers was successful because every movie about gamers up to that point had been, hey, let's laugh at the dorks in the basement. We said, we're coming to this from a position of love, and we're going to laugh with ourselves from inside. But you can do comedy about anything.
Right.
You just have to not punch down.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our fundamental rule. Instead of punching down, we say, how can we, if we're going to punch, we're going to punch up. And that allows us to make humor about anything. But it has to come from the people. If you're going to make humor about politics, it needs to be the humor of the oppressed, not of the oppressor.
That seems to make sense to me. Well, what's the next step? What's the next big thing?
Sure. I want Strawlers to be successful. I want Journey Quest and Gamers to be successful. It's continuing to build those. The next big thing, I don't know when it will happen. We've kind of been on this slow, grassroots, linear growth curve for years, and the question is, will we hit an inflection point where we're able to level up and to reach a larger audience or to attract name talent? Because while we can continue to do what we're doing, there's a certain element of growth that would be helpful in that it would allow us to employ more people, to work more. I have no interest in unlimited growth, but you certainly have the goals of, hey, wouldn't it be nice to produce a full TV season in a year instead of in 5 years?
That seems to make sense, and it's been you've had some really interesting individuals that you've been able to have on the shows up until this point. Let's end on an imaginary thing.
Sure.
Dream scenario.
Sure.
Name one or two individuals that you would just absolutely love to work with at some point in the future.
I want to work with John Rogers.
Really?
Showrunner for Leverage. He's currently working on the Name of the Wind show. I think he would be an awesome person to put something together with.
I think you're a man after my own heart right there.
Yeah. Who else? N.K. Jemisin, who wrote the Broken Earth trilogy. I think she is absolutely brilliant, and I would do any project that she wanted to do.
That's too cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much. You're a very busy man, and taking the time to speak with the Pudding Guy here is just fantastic, and I really I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And we're back. So, fantastic gentleman. He's just a pleasure to talk to, and I always enjoy Zombie Orpheus's work. They have just a really wonderful group of people that just seem to really enjoy creating something that can be shared with everybody. And as you heard from the interview, they have something that not only can be shared with everybody, but everybody can be a part of making something to be a part of that world. It's open. It's ready for the creative juices for anyone to just fill in and make stories, make something new.
New concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, like you mentioned before, we had spoken to some of those folks who are a part of that group, the larger group. So if you want to dig around on our website and see, we've got a couple of interviews.
Yeah,
with some of those folks.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully get some more because I kind of joked I'm trying to get a whole set of Zombie Orpheus, and there's a couple of individuals that I'm still trying to nail down to talk to. But so that is just the beginning of the flavor of GenCon. So you've got a little bit of some game manufacturers, some gaming stuff that's there. You got a little bit of some production of videos, movies, and television shows. We've got more coming in our next episode. Oh, so much more. And we'll probably get into a little bit of what it's like to be on the main convention floor, some of the highlights that you can see and do, and just really immerse yourself with GenCon. And we'll come back and tell you a little more about that later.